Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you all for joining us, me and Nick. Today, we're gonna do some game jam art basics. Nick's basically gonna live. He's just gonna live demonstrate you how to do like some basic art, some basic function in Blender. And in between, you can ask him anything. There can be like live Q&A. He also has experience with live streaming, so you can just ping him or like bother him or whatever. And something. And just like quick intro, like before Nick starts. So I known Nick for a long time, and basically he started his career, I guess, as I would say tutor, right? Was that the first experience, like as a tutoring on faculty?
Teaching, yes, but
Teaching, right?
Teaching.
Teaching.
Yes.
Yeah, and then he got the job in let's say gambling studio. How do you describe
let's
this?
Let's say gambling studio.
Gambling studio, right? Like did some slot machine work and stuff, and then he said, how's it put nice, like then he quit and started like pursuing his own like passion. And in between,
my LinkedIn to help with that.
Yeah.
Basically, did some in the gambling industry work. Did some short freelancing, then a bit of short contract work for some published multimedia house, some internship in Germany, and now I'm here as a 3D artist at Art Tour, being a 3D artist.
And you're basically looking more kind of like a museum, like showcasing in museum, like you showed me some mammoths and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, let's say museum work, 3D reconstructions with topology, presentation work, basically anything they needed. It's not straight up just museum work or heritage work. It's a little bit of everything, but it's so far so good.
Okay, and I think that's a good enough fit, right? But I think that was like summed up like your professional career in a nutshell. Let's say like in a quick summary, like quick CV. And now we can just jump in. You can ask Nick anything you want. I will be down in comments. And also I think Nick can also see your comments. And let's just start this.
Okie dokie. Okay, is there anybody in there? Is this also in Discord, Facebook, or YouTube, or anything, or just here?
It's you can see on your right. You can see all of the comments.
I just see the comments. Oh, there's nothing there yet.
But I'll also mention this, so you can just start and then.
Okie dokie. So, hey. So basically, regarding doing game jams, there's a lot of things that could go wrong and not many things that can go right. Let's be honest about it. Also, my camera is up there, my stream is up there, and my mic is down here. So if I'm like looking strangely. Since game jam is supposed to be like something fast and effective and just playing around, testing, having fun, they don't usually go that way. There can be a lot of stress with it, and because of it, you kind of want to find a way to survive by working. Now that people are in here, freely ask anything you want. This is an open talk, QA, everything. I can show anything you want immediately. So let's say when I started doing game jams, I always wanted to flesh out the idea first to know what we're even going to be doing. Like, okay, we're doing cars, environments, people, trees, whatever. So they have an idea of, okay, what am I going to do and what is somebody else going to do? Now, note, not everybody has the same workflow, regardless of whatever. It can just be the approach of modeling to the modeling software. It can be from curves, NURBS, polygonal sculpting, whatever you name it, and you're gonna have to kind of figure out where you're gonna draw the line as in compatibility. Usually, everything goes straight out from whichever software you have, turn it into a mesh, like polygonal mesh, and then just pass around. Also, it's very important for the meshes to be very low poly. And since there's going to be a lot of work being done here, try to make it, I'm not going to say as fast as possible, as best as you can, but try to make it good enough for the use case. So let's say the first game jam I did was 4 or 5 years ago. It was a racing game, and the idea was, okay, we're gonna need a car, environment, hills, trees, people, whatever. So I said, okay, I'm gonna make a car. What kind of car? I don't know. We have no idea. It's gonna be racing related, so car. So yeah. Okay, so this is already a car. The idea here is to have something that stands out, and is obviously something you're going to work with. This is especially important when you have programmers, and instead of just them using programmer art or just, let's say, cubes, spheres, or other random shapes, you just do a little basic thingamajig. And after you give them that, you have the file. When you export the file, you name it, let's say, car.fbx, whatever. So when the programmer has that, they work on it. And in the meantime, you're going to continue working on the car. You're going to be like, oh, okay, I want to add some details. Okay, so now this has to have some wheels. I just put on some wheels. No, Z. And okay, this is not a good-looking car, but it's a car nonetheless. So let's say this is it. So now I have a better-looking car. And let's say I spent an hour, maybe 2 hours working on this car. When I export it, I'm going to export it as car.fbx. So when the programmer gets it, he can just update the file, and he's going to get the new model. It's on you that you keep the car and the modeling process within the same, let's say, aspects, position, like always centered to everything, just to keep things, well, let's say, flowing. And again, they don't have to be good looking, they just have to be good enough. Because usually the first day, or let's say the first half day, is rapid prototyping. Now, this doesn't mean you're going to have to kill yourself to get something done. That means you're just going to have to get things working, because remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint. Despite game jams being both at the same time, but it doesn't matter really. You're supposed to have fun with it. So basic shapes, basic models, basic visuals that everybody can understand. So let's say I'm going to have okay, what is it? A trash can. Here, this is a trash can. Make it a little bit bigger. Put a little bit of a lip. Okay, so this is now a trash can. It doesn't have to make sense, but it is what it is. You just have to have something, placeholder. Now then we're moving on to textures. Usually it is good enough to just have, let's say, basic colors on, let's say, the car. Let's say hot pinks. This is racing. And the trash can is going to be a nice little gray color. That's usually it. And realistically, this is the approach you should take if it's your first game jam or your second or third or whatever. Later on, you're going to start wanting to use textures. Now, those are a bit more complex. I'm not going to go into that, because going into that, I would basically have to explain the entire process of how to do textures, UV mapping, unwrapping, coordinates, and then you have Substance Painter, Photoshop. It's a bit too jumbled, or let's say wide of a spectrum to elaborate at this point. But usually these things are good enough. Yeah, so new people, again, this is open Q&A, so if you have any information or questions, you would like to give me, please just put it in, and I'll try to answer your questions as neatly as possible, as I'm just trying to win this. Now, when you're modeling these kind of things, let's say this is 2 hours work, you have to know where the limit is in the model itself. Let's say, okay, I'm gonna make this car beautiful. Yeah, let's put some windows on them. Yeah, beautiful windows. And let's put on some, well, I'm just gonna put a little bevel on it. It doesn't matter. So now this is a beautiful looking car. Shade it smooth. Normals. There we go. Perfect. If you're trying to make something, let's say, more higher fidelity, higher topology, make sure you understand what you're doing, because the point of Game Jam is not to have one good-looking piece, a good-looking part, and the rest being basic shapes like this trash can, or let's say this present, or let's say this gun, because yes, this is a gun. You want to have as many props, meshes, or objects, whatever, look about as similar as possible, basically the same amount of work put into them. And of course, the main meshes models being the most highest of fidelity, but again, not so much standoutish that it's like, oh, look, this is where they lost time. No, you want to have everything seem like, oh, they spent a lot of time on everything and not just this specific thing right here, unless it's very important. Animation. Yes, animation. That is a thing I avoid like the devil. Realistically, I don't know if I'm the best person to show you that, but it basically works on keyframes. I'm just gonna skip a bit. I can tell you what is better, OBJ or FBX, because OBJ is usually just color data and mesh data, while FBX also has textures, animations, and other, let's say, morphing information. It's a lot better because it's an Autodesk format, while OBJ, I think it's an open source one. Now let's get back to the basic animation. Okay, so now let's say this is a car. You made it. Beautiful. It goes vroom, vroom in each direction. Now, wheels turn. So it's important to have wheels as separate objects. Oops. So when you're working on this, now let's say now I separate the meshes. I would see this just doesn't work. It doesn't want to work the way you want it. So always you want to center your objects. Now it's different in Max, Maya, and everything else, but you want to center them. So now here I set up the center in the middle of the wheel, or if you want to be pedantic about it, again, same center point, but different kind of mesh, acts differently, different center. Now it works better. Let's see. As for animation, you can use Mixama. Yeah, that's true. I haven't honestly tried that many things regarding animation because I'm mostly focusing on modeling, let's say, workflow and modularity at this point, and textures a little bit here and there, and lighting, and everything but animation, basically, because this can get very complicated. And I'm honestly not interested that much in animation anymore. But yeah, so now we have a car with 4 wheels. Regarding this, you can rig the thing by itself, like you can add bones to this. Let's add a bone armature. And have one bone be the center point, which is the car. You can see I'm not very well versed in this. Automatic weights. So whenever I move the bone, the car moves with me. And then if I make more bones, And let's say bend them like this. This bone here, separate bones. This bone is, I think, still connected somehow. Let's just try it out. Select it, select cursor. This thing is not centered. The bone is not centered. Now it is. Now if I pair the wheel to the bone, whenever I move the bone, the wheel turns. And in the end, I think, no, you can't. There is some logic to doing this. I can't really explain it to you precisely, but you always have to have, let's say, a main bone if you want to do bone animation, and have the character be programmed or controlled via the bone, or via the model or mesh, and be paired with everything else, or separate. I would usually, for fast things like this, recommend, let's say, separating them if you really want to do them, because once you do a wheel like this, you can literally duplicate it when it's in Unity or Unreal as a prefab, or I don't know, Unreal doesn't have them. And literally in programming, they can turn it and reverse the rotations, and it's gonna help you work with it in the long run. But you can also try and keyframe it. So let's say I'm in frame 1. I'm gonna press location, rotation, and scale. Go to 130, let's say a little bit more. Channels. Now I'm gonna rotate the wheel. If I have how much I did. Repeat it. And I messed something up. But it's still rotating, which is important. And that all leaves us to figuring out what is wrong with it. In Blender here you have these this dope sheet, which tells you where something is wrong. And usually we would just, for this, I should have just animated the x-axis, but animated everything else. So now they don't have to know the problem. Let's delete this and delete everything. See, I'm very inept in this. Have you tried animating Unity? Is it harder or easier? Depends. You can do the exact same animation in Unity and Blender and every other program that supports animation. The problem is, in Blender, when you animate it, if you do keyframe animation, you have to export the keys themselves, and that is consistent, and you have to figure out how to start, stop, and play the animation. And the same goes with bones. The difference is, I think bones are a bit more malleable, but a bit more complex. But if you do the keyframe animation in Unity, you have the benefits of the animation timeline, controllers, animation controller, directors, and so much more to do, because it's basically the end game engine. So if you're going to do this, I recommend most of the stuff being animated in Unity or Unreal or Godot, while let's say things are going to be consistently repeating, or let's say more complex like humanoid movement or robots to be done in Blender. But it's trial and error. It's hard to explain which is better at this point in time without an example. If you texture in Substance Painter, do you find textures in Unreal Engine darker? Yes and no. The thing is lighting. Right, these days I don't have that much problem, because I know the process of it. Because once you do Substance in Substance Painter, there's always a light. Regardless, there is always a light unless you decide there is no light in the scene, and it's always studio lighting, so it always looks good. So if you make it good in Substance, it's going to look good or similar in Unreal when you work on the lighting, because Substance works on a HDRI approach, where it's basically a texture and it emits lighting, but when you and it's a closed-off environment. But when you come to Unreal or Unity, when you put it in a basically new map, there's a completely different environmental lighting and shading. Materials work different. The calculations work different. I mean, the materials are the same. Just the way the light bounces is different. Let me just see. Material values shading. There's a really nice graph showing this. Basically, you probably all saw this at some point in time. Basically, when you add a certain metalness to an object, it has these kinds of values, and these values change depending if it's in Unreal or let's say in Substance or Unity or Godot. Now, this texture can basically be transported into Unity, and it's going to look different. It's not going to look the same. It's going to have a different approach to it. It can also be the post-processing that is applied to it. Like, let's say Unity, I think, has post-processing enabled immediately, or at least it's I don't know how you call it. The starting point is different from Unreal. Unreal will look better straight away. In Unity, you have to put a little bit more work in. But you can make the game engines look basically 90% similar or identical. It just depends on where you're going to have to put in the effort. Because with Unreal, you're going to have to put in more effort, let's say, into making it a lot easier to be processed, while Unity is already a very light engine. You have to put a lot more effort to make it look nicer. It's always a give and take thing. So that is it regarding shaders. Oh, here, a lot of good examples how these things work. Let's do material value shading Unreal. Different approach completely, even in the results. But yeah, this explains a lot how metallic works, roughness, transparency, and so on and so forth. So what I always recommend with this is wherever you're importing this, keep the level as basic as you can. If you don't understand it, then just work with that. But once you do understand it, it's much easier to adjust it. Let's say, okay, blah, 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 blah. Should I open an old project? I'm going to open an old project because why not? Blah, 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 blah. Where is it? Space is it? If it's going to process. So I can showcase what a difference lighting can make to a environment. No, not sequence. Anyway. Hopefully it's not going to calculate shaders because that will, oh, it's calculating shade. No, it's fine. Okie dokie. Let's go down. Is the stream okay? Cool. So let's say this area is very white. It's very bright. Excuse me. Too much talking. But this part is very dark. Now we have had post-processing enabled. This area would have been, let's say, a lot lighter because it would have taken a lot more of the environmental light and input that into the vision. Same as here. It's very dark, but once I go a little bit back, there's a little bit more light. And the closer you get to the darkness, the less light there is. And you can imagine that in Unreal and Unity the same, because there's always some basic processes within it. While this area has so much more light, but it's controlled, because I try to make this look nice. While here, not so much. So, but you should kind of follow, like, or try to do the lighting, let's say, the second day, unless lighting is so much more important within the final game. It takes a lot of learning and figuring out what works for you and how to approach it properly. In the beginning, I remember I was stressing out during the game jams like a lot, chugging Red Bulls like crazy, let's say through 3, 4. Yeah, that's adaptation. It's within post-processing. I was basically rushed to get as much done as fast as possible. It has to be as good as possible. And then on the third day, because we started on Friday, I was basically dead. I was tired. I didn't want to work on this. I just wanted it to be over. I wasn't enjoying the experience. And let's say in the fourth year, I kind of figured out, like, I'm going to take it easy. The game might be good, the game might be bad, but I'm going to enjoy the process, because the faster you work with it, the worse it's going to be on yourself. Because there's no point in trying to make a game just so, I'm just going to want to make a game. It's going to be the best game or it's going to be the worst game. I don't care. As long as you enjoy it, that's what counts, to be honest. And that also transitions into job. So any more questions? Otherwise, I'm just going to be rambling about, let's say, past experiences in jams. What else? When you're making lists of what you're going to make, like series of props, let's say you make a list of 30 props. Like, we're going to need a gun, we're going to need a car, we're going to need a wheel, 1, 2, 3, tree, person, me, blah, blah, whatever. Find in let's say half of them, choose which ones are the most important, get rid of the other ones, and most likely delete them, because you're not going to be able to make them. And then within the most important ones, take half of those and have it as a goal to make them. And when you make them, go on to the other half, because that's going to give you a realistic amount of time to try and figure it out, because you're going to do prop 1, prop 2, prop 3, give it to the programmer to import them, or the animator to try and animate them, but I don't recommend it, honestly. Give it to the programmer, try to figure out how the function works, like we said, with the tires, with the car, because they're going to have to understand if they're going to do it like this, like that, and what's the best approach to it. And once that is done, only then should you try and, let's say, do a better model, UV, textures, and so on. You always want to make a really solid base and like spread it as wide as you can. So anywhere you start, you're going to go up. Because if you start from the bottom, very fast rise up, you're going to be left with something that is uncontrollable, and it's just going to fall and break, regardless of how much time you're going to put into it. Do you recommend any Blender plugins for someone who is not a beginner? Let's see. Where there used to be a tab here, Workspace. I have Textile Density Checker, UV Toolkit, Extra Objects. Basically, try to figure out what you need. Because you're going to have one, like, okay, if you want to do UVs, actually, this took me a long time. Like, I was trying to do cables. I want to figure out, okay, can I buy cables? How can I do cables? And I found the plugin for cables. That basically saved a lot of time, because I had the entire cable, braided, straight, thick, thin. And I used that. Then I figured out how to make it my own way, myself, and kind of mix and match. But there are really plugins that I can recommend, because I don't work with plugins that often. I try to use as stock Blender as possible, because that means that wherever I'm going to go, I'm going to be able to use it. I have, let's say 5 key combinations that I changed to 2.79 standards, which I was used to. Everything else is stock. But I am very, very partial to UVing, as I actually enjoy UVing, which is blasphemy within the industry. I tried about 10 different plugins. So far is UV Pack Master 2. Let's just check it. I'll be with the second question soon. So it's UV Squares was the first one. Then I upgraded to UV Pack Master and UV Toolkit. This is basically a packing piece where everything that I've done, it's the best approach to packing it as complex as possible, as efficiently as possible, with the least amount of overlapping, and it has a lot of controls of Do you want to stack similar objects? Do you want to stack individually? Do you want separate UVs, or how I'm going to approach it? Well, UV toolkit is to straighten it out. Let's say, again, orientation, stacking, unstacking. Generally, most of these programs offer similar functionality. It's just how you interact with them. I don't like adding unnecessary scroll wheels, or let's say, what is this? Pie menus. So this works for me. And each of these plugins, I think it's 20 euros, because Blender plugins have to be open source, it's also on GitHub for free. Please model a basic environment, graph, street, just a prototype level. Okay. Let's delete this. Okay. Let's do basic plane. Let's say this is my basic environment. It doesn't have to look good. But let's say, okay, I want to have a street, and it's going to be a straight street. So let's do it like this. Delete the edges. And of course, street is too big. Oh no, what are we going to do with a big street? Narrow it. Make it a little bit more narrow. 2-lane. Of course, take the wheels with me. Wheels. And then I'm going to make a basic house. Let's say like this. I know it's a house. And now I'm going to just, let's say, duplicate the house. Move on here. Stretch it. This is going to be another house. Let's make a church. No. So a church is usually this size, shape. And yeah. And just, let's say, move this. And this is a church. And this is how you're supposed to go about making an environment. Or if you want, let's say, just a fence, you just stretch this little puppy like this. We're on up. Now we have a nice looking fence. And do a lot of basic shapes. Like you have, let's say, these few primitives like plane, cube, circle, square, blah, blah. All of these. With these, you can make an entire city. You just have to be creative with its use. Of course, you can spend much more time making it. But if you want like a really dense city, then you just start duplicating, moving, rotating, reshaping, putting in the background. So when you look at it from this angle, it already starts to look like there's something here. Maybe let's say delete this, replace this. Something along these lines. And I'm going to do grass because, well, it's just going to be a square. What kind of games did you have you made already? We made a racing game. Drift Easy. It was a drifting game, the first one we ever made, and it was a very bad drifting game because we were inexperienced. We were basically tired, long hours, basically no food except pizza, which is not food. And we're just trying it out. Then we made a mobile game. That was Drift Easy. We also made a mobile game. I don't remember the name of it, but it was about ads. And you were flying a spaceship, and you had to press buttons every so and so. But then ads would pop up in front of it, and you had to close the ads before you could press the button. And it was a lot of fun. Then we made a Katamari clone, but you're a bird going through the seasons. We had planned for like 4 seasons. In the end, we have only one giant map and not unlocks. What else? We had like Tower of Meat, which is basically a meat stacking game, and you had to like stack the meat while it's falling down to reach a certain line. What else? Political game where you were a banana and there was a orange fruit, which you can understand what it was. It also had a toupee. Oh, there was a VR game where you were a god painting the earth. I think well, we had about 8 games. I think the ones I remember. That was a lot of games. I don't even remember all. So yeah, a lot of variations. Not necessarily good variation, or let's say good games in general, but the ideas were there for good games. Just a lot more work was needed for each and every one of them. But I think the ones we made the best was what is it? The mobile game, like Not Enough Space, because there were like 6 or 7 artists, 1 programmer. And for the programmer, I think it was easy enough because you only had to make things interactable and pressable. And we just bombarded with graphics like spaceship cockpit, which I made. Then we had a bunch of ads, then characters, then pop-up bubbles. And yeah, that I think was pretty good. Although I think second place would be Tori no Katachi, which is the Katamari clone, I think. But yeah, a lot of games, bad games, but fun nonetheless. I've kind of quit game jamming because honestly, I'm too tired to jam, and I rather work on my own projects for my portfolio. Let's say it was a lot easier in my mid to late 20s than in my early 30s. Honestly, I would still like to do a game jam, but when I'm not stressed or overworked from work itself. But yeah, I would like to do a game jam with, let's say, an experienced team and not freshmen at this point in time, because I like to have a system and an approach where you don't have to figure out the beginning steps, but actually to the making game parts. Because usually it was like 2 days of figuring out, and then the last day of let's quick make it work. We're trying to make it work. Could you also do an opening in a house for a window with Boolean, and then maybe add just a plane for a window glass and show how to make it blue-ish, transparent, not now steam, as glass should be? Again, when you do these kinds of things, you don't want to make them in Blender. You want to make them in Unity or Unreal or whatever, because when you do here, let's say I color this like this. Let's go into material view. It's going to be red. And again, if you import OBJ or FBX, I don't recall exact. Well, I think they transfer color, but they don't transfer metalness, roughness, transparency. They all have their own approach to this. But let's say if I made a window, let's take a cube. It's a big window. Oh no, I have to select this Boolean. Did I do it? No, I cut the cube and not the window. So let's do Boolean. Accept. You can tell I don't use Boolean that often. Oh, did it work? Did it work? Yes, it did work. It worked. It's kind of the approach that I don't use at all anymore because there are problems with it, and it's not really effective. But let's say I made a window. Let's just separate this so that this is a separate window. It's gonna have a same material, new material. Let's give it a little bit more darker, and then let's see. It's transparency. I don't even know where alpha. Is it alpha? And see, this is things that they're important to note. I don't use Blender to texture anything anymore or to render at all because I use game engines. This for me is mostly a modeler. But if I did it in Unreal, it would be, let's say, different. as in Unity, you would have to take, let's say, a different texture and just give it transparency, because materials in each engine, this logic, are different. Sadly, there's not enough time, but there are a lot of tutorials and a lot of basic tutorials to how to make transparency. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to have able to show it at this moment in time without jumping through hoops, because even if it's a basic thing, it can still take a little bit more time than needed at this point in time. It's all down to experience of how bluish and transparent it should be. Maybe also recommend any other better ways to do basic windows. Yeah, maybe get a cube, or let's say get a cube, a basic plane. Basic plane, extrude or inset inwards, and already have, let's say, a window pane. And then just add another cube, scale it like this, rotate. You already have a window. It's not a good looking window, but it's a window. And then another plane for the transparent part itself. And basic shapes is all you need for a game jam until you start working on the, let's say, finer details. In this case, would be making this a little bit nicer. This, again, I'm going to say it, a basic window. What's a dream studio you'd like to work at, or which game really inspired you that you may want to become an environment artist? The original Super Mario Brothers for the NES in '92. That was basically it. That was the start of it. But I really started going into this, let's say, dabbling in around 2000s. Really started going into it in 2009 when I started modeling. As like trying out hobby, see where it goes. I went to college, did 3D modeling in 2011, but I only started seriously in 2016. Because there's like, let's say, the economic crash didn't help. Computers were expensive, tutorials weren't a thing, YouTube wasn't a thing. And at a certain point in time just passed me, and I already kind of become obsolete. And then now there are already schools for this. Now they actively teach 3D, and well, still not good 3D, but yeah, the original Super Mario Brothers on the NES. Is making games harder than just basic 3D design? Yes, much harder. I will honestly say, if you know how to model for games, you're basically already the most valued modeler within the studio, if you're doing 3D design. Because when you just do 3D design and just 3D modeling, you just have to make it look nice, and that's it. But the problem with that is adaptation, adding performance, and everything is almost non-existent. Let's say I model the window. It's good. It's good enough. But let's say I want to make the window look nice and smooth. I subdivide it. Oh, now it's circle. Okay, I have to figure out how to make it work. I'm just going to add polygons to it. Okay, I'm going to add more polygons to it. Blah, 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 blah. And now it's a better looking window, but still not perfect. So I'm going to figure out how to make it nice and crisp. So let's say this is a nice looking window. This is how, let's say, a visual modeler would make it work. But as a game modeler, all these extra polygons are just unneeded topology. And I can basically make, let's just copy paste this and go to the basics. Back. I can still make the same exact window, let's say close enough. I'm going to make it exactly with the least amount of effort. And this has what? 144 polygons. This one has, let's say, 100,000. No, 6,000. They both look identical, but this one is optimized and works better, and it's going to use, let's say, more complex textures. But there's a whole, let's say, deeper explanation to this. Well, what's a dream studio I like to work at? I would like to work at Ubisoft, honestly. But that's basically just rose-tinted glasses. There is no studio I would really like, other than that, to work at. Because in the end, the studio is a studio. If the project is not interesting, it doesn't matter if you work at the most well-known, respected, or whatever studio, if you're not interested in the project that you're making yourself. Which college is that? There's a lot of schools in Europe now that have 3D courses and game-focused curriculums, not specifically 3D modeling, but let's say writing, modeling, animation, programming. It's basically everything. If you want to be good at, let's say, if you want to make a game, you should. I'm not saying you should, but you could study one thing that you're interested in, and then as a hobby, work on it separately. But for me, programming didn't work. I tried it. I just wasn't too into it, so I just focused on art because I enjoy doing it. And this is basically, 13 years in the making right now. Still do freelance work, and if so, how is it going? No, I'm not. I'm employed fully because freelancing is stressful and not for me. That is basically it. I figured that out a few months before Corona. And yeah, freelancing is not for me. Although, well, I would try it, but it's risky. You kind of have to have clients already waiting for you. And you have to have your finances kind of figured out, how much you need, how much you're willing to spend, how much you can spend, how much you're going to invest. And I remember I figured out that if I want to freelance, I'm going to have to make around 2,500 euros a month. Saying it was like, oh, I'm going to make so much money. Realistically, that's not enough. That is still on the low end, and I should be charging more. But that was the minimum, because you need money. Whichever project you're going to do, you're going to have to try to figure out how to make. Let's say if it takes you 1 week to work on a project, that should be enough for 2 weeks of living, just as a backup. And so let's say I worked a month on a project. I have to guarantee that with that month, I would try to guarantee that I have the next month paid, because it's not necessary that you're going to be working straight each week, each day, each month. You're probably realistically going to be working 6 months a year. The rest is going to be twiddling your thumbs, trying to figure out things, marketing yourself, doing finances, stressing out, looking things to do, learning, and then you have to count in sick days, vacation money, educational money, software money, taxes. I think when I said like 2,400 euros, that's the amount I want to make minimum. I think it was 25 euros an hour, and most people in Slovenia are not going to pay you that unless you're really good and unless they really need you, or they're just a normal functioning studio. Because most are like, I'm going to pay you maybe 500 euro or 1,000 euros for, let's say, X amount of work. And it becomes very, very stressful because money is not always there. The thing 3D design is more desirable in the future. Or games. The gaming industry is only growing. The problem is, I think it's not gonna reach a bubble anytime soon. It's just that games are becoming more expensive to make. They're gonna need more profit to be sustainable, and they're gonna have to become more expensive. But games are getting cheaper every year, and games realistically should start costing around, let's say, if a new game now is 60 euros, they should start costing 65 to 70 euros, or the digital versions of games should become cheaper to offset the cost of retail. But 3D design is going to become even more desirable because so many people are going to be approaching it. Maybe even because of Blender, because the entry point is basically free. It only takes you time, and not even cracking software like you used to, Maya, Max, and everything else. So it's already becoming very, very saturated to a point, and almost oversaturated. But you actually have to put in a lot of hours and passion behind it, and believe in what you're doing is good, and not give up. Because this job is not, it's not for the money, it's for the soul. And if this is stressing you out, I'm not gonna say choose a different job. I'm saying keep this as a hobby and not as a job. Because you don't want to turn your hobby into a job, unless you really, really want to, or let's say you find yourself spending more time working on the hobby and thinking about the hobby than at the job itself. Then you kind of want to start thinking about it. But there's a lot of baggage with that. How about selling 3D models? Is it profitable? Yes and no. When you start out, nobody's going to buy your stuff because it's not good. Let's face it. You're going to make a phone, desk, table, chair, bed, window, whatever. Everything that you're going to make in the beginning is already on the market, and everybody else's work is already 10 times better than yours. That's basically fact. You're going to want to start having it out free, or start working on your portfolio. And when your portfolio is good enough, whatever you make for the portfolio, try to think of how to package the textures, the materials, the models, optimize low, high, medium, poly, and then package that as an asset you want to sell. Let's say, for example, I haven't sold assets, but I do sell my projects. So I started, let's say last year, I started thinking of how I'm going to try to make something into a product that I would sell. And I tried, okay, maybe I'm going to start doing tutorials or learning, teaching stuff or whatever. Nothing was good, and I wasn't happy with it. I was just putting more saturation in a market that is already oversaturated. So I was like, I'm going to make portfolios of my portfolio pieces. And whatever I do, I'm just going to put the entire project on it. The first one, house at sea, free, whatever. Then a dumbass office remake. I was like, yeah, that's worth €1. You're gonna, and it's what I want in the market. Projects that are done, that I can, let's say you come to my portfolio, like, oh, what is this project? And you see, like, oh, I like this project. I like what I see. I'm interested in how this person is doing it. Oh, here's a time lapse. Oh, it's an Unreal. I would like to see what is within this Unreal project. I am selling the project for €1. It's not free, because if you want the project, you want to, let's say, at least buy me a coffee. That's it. Because if it's free, nobody's going to take it. If it's €1, €2, or €5, it's automatically people are like, oh, I need money to buy a project. That means it's worth at least €1. And so I made the projects. I put it, let's just do liminal space. I structured the folders to where assets, materials, models, textures. Though this is kind of like, yeah. So when somebody buys it, everything is categorized. Let's say, oh, how do you do the pipes? Oh, the pipes materials are here. Where are the models? Oh, here are the models. This is the, let's say, inside wall, whatever. You see how I did this, how I structured it. And with it, I also put in my blend files, which have the prototype, final, and in between folders. So the person buying it can literally look at my project from start to finish. And I also have a YouTube video detailing everything that I'm doing within this portfolio project. It is a 30-minute explanation. Of course, I speak a bit too much, like I ramble, but I have everything. Nothing is hidden, and that's kind of what I'm trying to sell. I'm trying to sell you the entire project. that you can look at and learn. Let's see. How did you build your portfolio? Well, honestly, I worked on it. That's as simple as it gets. This was 2015 or 16, and I basically took, I quit my job and said, like, okay, I'm gonna dedicate 6 months, the next 6 months, building my portfolio, try to get a job. And I said, like, okay, 1 model a week, and then it's done. Then the next one is going to be a model and try to texture it within a week, and then go so on and so forth and so forth. And I built up quite a collection of these things. And then they became more complex. They were like single props. They were not efficient. They were game ready, as in real time, but so much could be improved. Then I started doing challenges where I did 3 props in 3 months during my work week. And I started going into the habit after work. I have something to eat, a bit of half an hour of YouTube, and then I work for 3 to 4 hours every day after work. So basically, I was doing 12 to 14 hours work days, and I was starting to burn out. And then I started lowering it, and then you just figure out your workflow. And then slowly going into Unreal, better renders, Unreal renders, modelings, everything, working from pictures. Then some more animation work, like camera angles, Unity, let's say week-long projects, 100% one-to-one recreations, recreating old existing projects into my approach, my design, modularity, different, cartoony, liminal space, lighting. You have to take steps, and these steps take literally years. So I hope that answered your question. I just I just recently learned about modeling with voxels. Have you ever tried it? No. I haven't done any work with voxels. I mean, voxels are basically 3D vertices. Basically, a pixel is basically a 2D voxel. Voxel is a 3D pixel. Not really. There is a voxel maker, voxel painter that I tried, but it's honestly not in my interest. Just an update, Rook, how much time do we have left? Or because we can go.
I don't know. Like we can go for
half an hour more.
I would say like 15,
we can even stop now. I don't care.
No. I mean, no. I think it's quite interesting. 15 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that.
As long as people have questions, I'm willing.
Yeah, exactly. As long as people have questions, we can go on. And if you're tired, then just inform me, and we're gonna.
I'm fine. I don't sleep.
But if also announcement, like if I guess, Nik, if
we can try to go into a project that I'm going right now to try to showcase what I'm doing, how I'm approaching this, which could be like, let's say, an advanced level of what you can do with this.
Mm-hmm. I want to also say, like, if you're up to, if somebody has like more kind of like a personal question, like we can go to Discord and they can share your screen or so on.
Sure.
But that's later for after the talk.
Oh yeah, sure. Why not? I can jump into Discord later on. Window. But yeah, cool. Basically, right now, if you know Europa. In Ljubljana, there is a thing called Europa Kavarna, and it's basically this. When I was looking for, I'll explain it like this. So basically, on Twitter, I have this feed of. It's called Archilect. It's basically an AI looking for tags and I think overall visual, aesthetically pleasing pictures. Let's see, Archilect. Archilect.com. Yeah, it's an AI that looks for pictures that are interesting. It's like let's say, black and white, mute tones, aesthetically pleasing. It's something that I'm so interested in trying to recreate. And I have like a folder which is I don't know, let's say thousands of pictures. And whenever I want to do something, I go through the folder, and it takes me about 2 hours to go through the folder each and every time. I do this every 2-3 months when I start a project. And I saw this Europa Cafe, and I was like, yeah, I want to do this. But I didn't know this was Europa Cafe because this is no longer in Ljubljana. This is a very old picture from the 70s and 80s. I think it was taken down in the 80s. And I was like, okay, I'm going to recreate it. And every time I recreate or make something, I try to find a way to make it interesting. Like the liminal, let's open our portfolio again. Each is a learning experience, like from, let's say, one-time recreations, lighting, game-ready environments, rendering, material work, concepting, blah, blah, themes, this, that. Everything has its own meaning. Now, here I would say is where I've gone pro. Let's include this during COVID, actually, because I had time to actually focus on my art. And I started going into modularity. Let's say make one piece and make it reusable, modular, be it through a script or, let's say, like Lego blocks. You just put one next to each other. This was the first test. This was the second one, third one. And this is like Lego blocks. Then here I tried, let's say, making one and try to automate the process. And this one especially was automation. And I'm gonna actually show this too. Where is it? Hotel courtyard. Is this challenge? Let's go into the blend files. Is this one? Is this it? No. Oh, come on. What is this one? Click 2. No. God damn it. Let's say it's this one. No. God damn it. I don't know which one this is. Let's just open this one and see what it is. The assets. Of course, I don't have it. Anyhow, no. Doesn't matter. Anyway, I made this in such a way that I made one modular piece, and then the entire thing was made. Okay, so let's just go here. So basically, for this one, I just made these two pieces, like this piece and this piece, and everything else is basically repeated on a curve. And I had to figure out how to do that, how to make it. And this is effective for multiple reasons. So if I wanted to redesign it, all I had to do was redesign these two pieces and everything else would follow. And I figured out how to do that. And I'm bleeding. How did you get ideas? As I said, I have a folder of images and a Twitter feed arcollect. And I just basically save each and every one of those images that I find interesting. Let's go. No selfies. There you go. This is a folder called Diskette. And basically, it's just a bunch of images. And as I said, it takes me 2 hours every 2 to 3 months to go through the pictures and like see, oh, which one is good. Let's say, oh, I'm going to go through. Load, computer. You're strong. You're a strong boy. And this one. So let's say, oh, this one has like really good colors. It has texture. It has fabric. Has a ceiling. And like, I might use that. And I go through the pictures like this, and you can see the shapes, the patterns, the colors that are interesting to me. And then I decide on one image. Let's say this one. No. This one. And I say, this is my main image. I want to do these things, these flaps, these metal parts. I'm like, okay, this is my main image. And then I go through the entire thing again to find images that are similar to this and put them on the side. And think of ideas that could be good. Let's say, oh, I'll put an escalator. It has really nice lighting here. It might work. Oh, night lighting. This is also good. And then, oh, let's say hotels, Yugoslavian glass. And I just put it into one big reference board. Oh, here it is. This is a reference board for the cafe. So this is the main image that I want to recreate. What I have here is how it looked before, different angles. So here, this is the only one that I know what color this was. And I have a different perspective of everything, how the sides look, how this looks, how it's illuminated, how it looks now. This is the perspective of the construction inside of the thing. This is the new Cacao Cafe that is there that I can see, oh, the arches, how this works, how this here works, how it looked in the old days, so it was painted, or original paint. It was painted very green, disgusting. The location, how to do the curve here. Oh, there's a tram line here. Interesting. Electrical lines. And all of these little things that you need to add up. Also, how this looked here. Like, I didn't know there was a gap here. And then I have like, oh, I'm going to make a tram, dimension, size, perspective. Then maybe the mood lighting I want to use. Like, all of these things make up the image. So also I was thinking, maybe I can do curtains. I have some curtains. Maybe I can add a little bit something to it. Maybe a modern night sky. And all this adds up. And right now, in Blender, I have a lot. Like, you can see, I have a tram line, this light post, tram. The tram was made here, so when I go into the perspective, I have the town light here. And then these things. And what is important about these things is that I only made one segment. This is one segment that I made, that I perfected, but I have to figure out how to make it repeat without being noticeable. So I made one complete part, and then I basically cut it up and made an array. But this took a lot of time to do. Same with this one. It's mirrored. It's a lot more complex. And this took about as long as here, but I already had these pieces, like these pillars here, this here, these here, already originally here. And so it's a lot of thinking forward how I'm going to do this and how it's best for the project. Because let's say, oh, I don't like how, I don't know, this looks. I delete it and it's gone. Or let's say this part is not low enough. I can just lower it. Ignore this. And it's fixed. Again, it's modular, but it's a different approach to thinking as before. Then now, in Unreal, let's just close this. Here, I've already recreated the angle that I'm going to use. I already have the tram where it's going to go. I have the railings here. And yeah, everything is going on slowly because there's just so much work. And for these, here you see some of these have a pattern. Let's say square here, gray here, gray here. This one doesn't. Because when I modeled this, I just made it look good, but it wasn't optimized. It wasn't practical. It was expensive, and the UVs didn't work. And so I spent about 12 hours just making UV textures for this and this section. So that's a whole different layer that I didn't think about, but I had to slowly do. And if you look at my UVs here, let's look at the broken one not done. Oh, I'm separating them. Let's say they're still ugly. They're ugly. Nothing works. But if I look at this one, everything is made compact and optimized as it can be into a square. And I know exactly where each and every one of these things is. Like, let's say, oh, this is this part of the wall, or this here is this part of the wall. And all this took a heck of a lot of time. And I haven't even done textures. I haven't even finished doing the chairs. I haven't even finished doing this. I haven't done the light bulbs, the electricity. This isn't finished. There's still a lot of work going on here. But I would recommend this when you're starting a project, and if you think you're spending way too much time on this and you're not advancing at all, have the project centered and then put the camera on the project. And at the end of the day, when you're done, take a screenshot and then do it again the next day and the next day and the next day and the next 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 and the next. And you start to see actually how much work is already in this. Now, by the numbers, this says 15. So that means I have spent 2 to 3 hours on average. Let's say 2 hours. No, let's say 2 hours on a project on average. With some days, like let's say this day specifically, I spent 12 hours on the project. But I know that. And then let's say an hour, because all I did was, let's say 2 hours. I added a pipe and pointing. I added a pipe and some windows. 1 hour or 2 hours for this. Some more time, and then UVs. Realistically, I think there's about 40 hours in this project, but it's been 15 days. So on average, what is that? Let's do some live calculation. Let's do 40 hours divided by 15. So basically 2.5 hours every day. It doesn't sound much. It doesn't maybe look much, but when you have the experience, this is actually quite a lot of work. And I think I'm actually being quite fast with this. I'm not even precise. A lot of these things here overlap. A lot of these things here are ugly, but you don't see them because all you're going to see is the front side. So try to spend as little time as possible on, let's say, unnecessary details like these curtains. This is one curtain duplicated 5 times. Regardless of that, I've made an entire curtain ready for simulation, and I did 7 versions of the curtain. So if I show you how I did this, let's do a timeline. I press play. Oop, whoa. Sorry. Let's do it like this. If I start playing it, I can move this. Ooh, and apparently I messed up somehow. Let's back. Then again, play. I basically made a simulation for a curtain. I didn't need to do that, but I did, and I did 7 different simulations. Now I just take this and I have a curtain. But I know it's accurate, and to me that is important. You set yourself deadlines, or do you just work as you please? I work as I please. I try to work every day, or if I don't work every day, let's say 1 or 2 days, I work on the weekend. Because I want to enjoy what I'm working. Like, I know I'm spending a lot of time, maybe too much time, but I don't know, I'm learning. I'm still learning, everybody's learning, and there's no end to learning. And honestly, I try to enjoy this as much as I can. Because life is already stressful enough, and work is stressful. So when I come home, I just want to spend 4 hours making a curtain. And that's totally fine with me, because I'm learning, and the next time I'm going to do it, it's going to be 5 minutes. Yeah, setting deadlines is good, but not everything has to be a deadline for me personally. Like, okay, I can do this, I can do that. With experience, if you know you can finish it within an hour or within a day, you're going to give yourself a deadline like I did with the curtains. I said, okay, I'm going to do the curtains today, and that's it. And I'm not going to work on it ever again, and I make the curtains that day. But it's only because I have the experience that I set myself a deadline. If you have no experience, or if you're very inexperienced or don't know how to make it, the worst thing you can do is give yourself a deadline, because you already have a deadline and you're already learning. Those are 2 stress factors. Just working 8 hours is stressful and tiresome. Imagine working, adding a deadline to yourself, and learning at the same time. That is so much stress that you don't need, and you're going to burn out. I did. And after the burnout, I didn't work on my project for about 3 months, but I still had to work at work on projects, and that was painful. You don't want to burn out. I would recommend this, that you work on something, you enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, put it aside. Don't work on it. Start a different project. Why not? And one time you're gonna figure out when is a good time to start and stop or restart a project. But it's very much trial and error. But since the last year, all the projects that I started have been finished. And if you look at it, this I started thinking, when was it? This was, I think, in November, or this. No, this was. I think this is actually in February. This was literally in February before COVID started, and it took me 2 months to do. I said, okay, I'm gonna spend 2 months on it, maximum. And when it was 1 month in, I was like, man, I better start actually working on this more. And it finally got together 2 days after, because I knew if I spent 2 days more on it, it's going to be so much better than if I just cut it. And that is experience. I work at Arctur in Gorica, making retopology and animations, like hard animation, just like, let's say, assembly lines, reconstructions for photogrammetry and so on. No game studios. But again, this was 2 months. Initially, I just wanted to make one segment. I made an entire thing and almost made an entire city. But I stopped the city because I knew, okay, I want to do this. 2 months, done. This was a challenge, 2 months. This one, 1 month. There was no reason to go further than that. This, 1 month. No reason to go further than that. And this one was, I think, a month and a half, actually, or maybe a month after work. So it's getting easier and better with each project. And I think that kind of ends everything, because we're going way long, which is fine with me, but I think Roke is tired.
No, I mean, I think we can do this discussion, like, or maybe like you can like do like more like peer review of other projects, like in the Discord. But I think it was fantastic talk, and thank everybody for joining us. And yeah, again, like join us in the Slovenian Games Discord server, and we can talk more.
Thanks,
I think Nik and I think Nik will be happy to like share more tips and tricks. So yeah,
badly.
Cool. And with this, we're gonna finish the stream, and see you soon. Tomorrow at 6 is gonna be a talk from Bryn, and Bryn is gonna talk about creating communities of developers. And yeah, also gonna be interesting
to talk about the first studio that I worked with.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna talk about that studio.
Or maybe you can ask him in the
privately.
Privately, yeah. And yeah, see you soon. Ciao.
Bye.